he goes by Elliot now. He's never been happier. He's having a blast at college. And, you know, that's all that most people need to know for the most part. But since this community is so important to me, and I know I'm really loved by everyone here, I feel it's important and fitting to share a little bit more about my story with everyone this morning. So, over a year ago, I realized that I wasn't being completely honest with myself. And it started out with being confused about my sexuality. So I took to the internet and did some research, and I figured out that it was actually a gender issue for me. So as I was processing all of this over the summer, I thought, oh boy, I really need to tell someone this secret. So I told one of my really good friends that I was just having some gender identity issues, and I needed to tell someone this before I went crazy. And that was in July, and that was all I needed for the rest of the summer. I was able to continue processing this and think about my plans and what I wanted to do in college. Now, one thing that most people here probably don't know is the first person that I told that I was transgender for sure was our own Reverend Brenda Brown. And 2 weeks before I left for college, I thought, I need to tell someone that I'm trans before I leave, just so someone in this town knows. I thought, who's someone who has confidentiality, who is familiar with LGBT things? And I thought, hey, Brenda just got here, so why not find her? So I tried tracking her down at a coffee shop, and there were lots of other people there. I thought, well, I can't tell everyone here, because, you know, my parents, they might be a little bit upset that these other people got to know before they did. So I was able to catch Brenda here at church, and I went into her office, and I talked to her for about 2.5 hours. And for me, that was just a really powerful experience. It was the first time I was just being completely open and honest with someone else about myself and my feelings about who I was as a person. I was incredibly vulnerable, and it was scary, but also really exhilarating. So Brenda was incredibly accepting. She maintained my confidentiality while I was away at college. And I remember I left that meeting feeling so great that I texted my band section leader, because I'm in band and I was going to be in the marching band at college. I told her, hey, I'm transgender, can you change my name on the roster? And she texted me back, yes, we can definitely do that. Let me know if you need any help. The drum majors and the director are all here for you. And I thought, oh boy, this is really exciting. So I left Grand Junction for college, and Brenda was the only person who knew that I was trans, and I had one other friend who knew that something was going on with my gender. So I walked into the band room to sign up and do the registration for band camp, and I saw the roster on the list. My name was Elliot. It was so reaffirming. I can't even begin to describe the feelings. I can still remember the feeling that I got when I saw my name right on the roster. Luckily, my parents weren't there, because what's this name on the roster? Like, oh, before you drop me off for a few months and see me, let me tell you something. That didn't happen. So I got my first name tag that I got to write Elliot on, and since I was having lunch with my parents afterwards, I had to put it on my undershirt so they wouldn't see this name tag with this different name on it. And we had lunch, they dropped me off, we said goodbye, and I walked into the band with my Elliot name tag, and everyone there called me Elliot. And after that first day, I went back to my dorm room and I just cried because I was so happy that I was finally being able to live at how I had been dreaming of for years, actually. And I knew that everything was going to be okay and I would get everything figured out. So the interesting thing is, in band, everyone knew me as Elliot, but in my dorm hall, they still knew me by my old name, and they thought I was just going to be any other old college girl. Well, boy, they were wrong. So the first person at college who found out that I was trans, it wasn't supposed to happen, but I was walking back with him. He lived in my hall, so he he thought I was a girl, and we were walking back with this other guy who we had just met, and I had to introduce myself to this guy as Elliot. So he said goodbye to us. He said, "Bye, Elliot," and bye to my friend. And my friend turned to me and said, "Wait, what? That's not your name?" I said, "Well, let me tell you something about myself." And I went ahead and told him, and he said, "Well, that's really cool. And you know, I really don't care. Like, you're a cool person no matter what gender you are." I said, "Thank you," and that means a lot. And since then, we've become really good friends. Now, for my roommate, I had to tell her, we were doing our roommate agreement, so there's stuff like groceries and study habits and having visitors over. We finally got to the end, and it was the other section, and she said, "Okay, we're finally done with this." I said, "No, we're not." And she said, "Okay." I said, "How would you feel if I told you that I was trans?" And she said, "I wouldn't care." I said, "Well, that's good, because I am." And she said, "Okay, cool." And I explained a little bit more about what that meant. And at that moment, our RA was walking by, and we said, "We should probably tell the RA." And the RA turned and looked in, and she said, "What?" Because she heard her name. And we said, "Come in here." And my roommate said, "We should probably close the door." And the look on in her face was just like, it's 2 days into classes. What possibly could be going on that we need to close the door? So we closed the door, and I told her, and she was like, "Oh, whoa, that's really neat. And here are some resources for you." She immediately went to make me a new name tag for the door, and she said, "Come out to everyone in the hall as you feel comfortable." So I slowly started coming out to other people in the hall. At first I tried to do it one-on-one and in person, but you know, after the 4th time of going through this explanation and answering questions, I thought, "Whew, this is kind of exhausting, and I'll just post on our Facebook page." And I did, and I was really lucky that everyone in the hall was very kind and respectful and supportive. Everyone treated me normally, and they tried their best with name and pronouns. You know, it's good to have a place that you feel safe, where you're sleeping. And so this was about maybe a week or so into school, and I realized I need to come home and tell my parents. So luckily my uncle lives in Fort Collins. I went out to lunch with him, and then I told him what was going on, and he said, "Okay, yeah, I can definitely get you home." So the second weekend after school had started, he drove me home. Our cover-up story was that I just needed the car, which was true, but you know, there's a little more. So I came home, I told my parents, and that went better than I could have ever imagined. And I was able to go back to school knowing that I had my family on my side, and I have all these new friends who were like family also on my side. So I was able to start coming out to some of my friends back here, and everyone was really supportive. And then my parents told everyone here and kept me updated on like who knew what was going on. So you see, I had this great community back in Fort Collins. I knew I was loved, and I knew I was supported. And I was a little bit nervous and scared about coming back to Grand Junction because I didn't know what the reaction would be. Everyone thinks there's this young woman going off to college, and then back comes a young man, and some people I don't think recognize me. But I was really looking forward to coming back to this community because our church is open and affirming, and that's something that is really special, and not a lot of churches profess to being open and affirming. You know, anyone can walk through our doors and know that they will not be judged, and they will be loved, because people here just want to get to know them. They don't really care about the sexuality or gender. It's like, I want to get to know you as a person. And by accepting everyone, our community and the growth of everyone as a person in this community, is so much better, because when you take everyone in, you get everyone's stories. You get stories that can range from someone growing up in poverty to someone who maybe grew up in a higher class family. You can get a mix of those sorts of people, whereas in other places, it's more sort of like an elitist club where only people with certain qualities are allowed in and are accepted by the people in that community. And this morning, I guess this is my testimony for what this community has done to me, and I just want to thank every one of you sitting here and everyone who's been a part of my journey for supporting me, because without you, I would not be standing here